The year was 2147, a time when humanity had stretched its reach far beyond what anyone thought possible just 2 centuries earlier. Earth's blue skies were now dotted with spacecraft ferrying people to colonies on Mars and mining stations orbiting Jupiter's moons. Yet for all their progress, humans remained confined to the edges of their own solar system. Beyond that lay the great unknown, the vast stretches of deep space that many believed were too dangerous for fragile beings like humans to explore, far away from Earth. In a distant corner of the galaxy, a coalition of advanced alien species, known as the Valith Alliance, watched humanity's efforts with quiet disdain. To them, humans were little more than short-lived, biologically weak creatures who lacked the resilience needed to survive the rigors of interstellar travel. The Valith had seen countless civilizations rise and fall across the stars, and they assumed humanity would follow the same path, stumbling at the first real challenge of venturing into the void. It was during an interstellar conference, a rare gathering of representatives from dozens of intelligent species, that this belief was made painfully clear. Human delegates stood before the assembly, hoping to secure permission to send exploratory missions deeper into uncharted territory. Their request was met with skepticism, if not outright ridicule. One Valith ambassador even went so far as to say, "Your kind will never endure the trials of deep space. You're too fragile, too fleeting." Back on Earth, news of the rejection spread quickly, igniting both frustration and determination among those working in the field of space exploration. Among them was Captain Ryan Carter, a seasoned astronaut whose career had been defined by his unwavering commitment to pushing boundaries. He sat inside the command center of NASA's lunar outpost, staring at a holographic display of the Milky Way. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay beyond the familiar constellations. Ryan wasn't alone in feeling restless. Across the room, Dr. Laura Bennett, an astrophysicist renowned for her groundbreaking research on cosmic radiation, leaned against a console, arms crossed. Her sharp green eyes reflected a mix of anger and resolve. Beside her stood Jake Thompson, a mechanical engineer with grease-stained hands and a perpetual grin that masked his fierce intelligence. Both had devoted years of their lives to preparing humanity for the next step in space exploration, only to see their dreams dismissed by outsiders. "We can't let them decide our fate," Ryan said finally, breaking the silence. His voice carried weight, commanding attention without needing to raise it. "If we wait for someone else's approval, we'll never move forward." Laura nodded slowly.
Ow!
"They underestimate us because they don't understand us. We've adapted to every challenge thrown our way. Why should this be any different?" Jake cracked his knuckles, his grin widening. "So, what you're saying is, we prove them wrong?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Exactly. The decision was made within hours. A daring plan began to take shape. That involved sending a small crew aboard the Odyssey, Earth's most advanced deep space vessel, on a one-way mission into the azure expanse. This region of space was infamous for its unpredictable conditions and mysterious phenomena. It was also completely unexplored, making it the perfect proving ground for humanity's potential. As word of the mission spread, volunteers poured in from every corner of the globe, but Ryan, Laura, and Jake knew better than to rush into such a critical endeavor. They carefully selected a core team capable of handling whatever challenges awaited them. Alongside Ryan's leadership, Laura's expertise in astrophysics would guide their navigation through treacherous cosmic anomalies, while Jake's engineering skills ensured the ship itself could withstand the harsh environment. Preparations moved swiftly but meticulously. Supplies were loaded, systems tested, and contingency plans drawn up for every conceivable scenario. Despite the urgency, there was no room for error. Every member of the crew understood the gravity of their mission, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. If they succeeded, they would shatter the Valith's assumptions and open the door to endless possibilities. If they failed, it might mean the end of humanity's ambitions in space altogether. On the day of the launch, crowds gathered around screens worldwide to watch history unfold. The Odyssey stood poised on its launch pad, gleaming under the artificial light of Earth's orbital facilities, Sleek design hinted at the cutting-edge technology housed within, while its reinforced hull promised protection against the unknown dangers ahead. As Ryan, Laura, and Jake boarded the vessel, they exchanged final words with loved ones back home, knowing full well they might never return. Inside the cockpit, Ryan took his seat, gripping the controls tightly. Laura settled into her station. Already reviewing data streams from external sensors, Jake gave the engine bay one last check, patting the wall affectionately, as though reassuring the ship itself. The countdown echoed through the cabin, each second stretching longer than the last. 10, 9, 8. Ryan glanced at his companions, meeting their determined gazes. There was no fear in their eyes, only resolve. 7, 6, 5. Laura muttered softly under her breath, running calculations in her head. She trusted science and logic above all else, but even she couldn't deny the thrill coursing through her veins. 432. Harness grinning despite himself. This was at the moment they'd been waiting for. Humanity's chance to prove itself worthy of the stars. 1. Ignition. The engines roared to life, shaking the entire structure as the Odyssey lifted off. Flames erupted beneath the ship, illuminating the faces of those watching below. Slowly but surely, the vessel ascended, piercing through layers of atmosphere until it disappeared into the blackness of space. Once free of Earth's gravity, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of celebration. Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. Laura adjusted her headset, already scanning for anomalies in the surrounding void. Jake popped open a panel near his feet, checking readings. From the propulsion system. "All right, team," Ryan said, his tone shifting from celebratory to serious. "This is where the real work begins." Ahead of them stretched the azure expanse, seemingly endless sea of darkness punctuated by swirling nebulae and distant pinpricks of light. It was beautiful, yes, but also terrifying in its vastness. No human had ever ventured this far before, and the risks were immense. Cosmic radiation, gravitational distortions, and unforeseen hazards lurked around every corner. But none of that mattered now. The Odyssey had left Earth behind, carrying not just its crew but the hopes and dreams of billions. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon of stars, lay the answers they sought at hand, perhaps redemption for a species deemed unfit for greatness. For Ryan, Laura, and Jake, the journey was just beginning. And though they didn't know it yet, the trials they faced would test not only their skills and courage, but also their very humanity. Little did they realize that proving the Valeth wrong would require more than surviving the azure expanse, would demand sacrifices, breakthroughs, and moments of sheer brilliance that would echo throughout the cosmos. Their story was about to begin. The Odyssey drifted silently through the void, its sleek frame illuminated faintly by the glow of distant stars. Inside the ship, the hum of machinery and the soft beeping of monitors filled the air. The crew had left Earth's orbit days ago, but the reality of their journey was only beginning to sink in. They were no longer tethered to the safety of their home planet. Ahead of them stretched the azure expanse, a region of space that even the most advanced alien civilizations avoided. Ryan? Carter stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the controls. His sharp blue eyes scanned the star-speckled viewport, as if searching for answers hidden among the constellations. He couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. This mission wasn't just about exploration. It was about proving humanity's worth to a skeptical universe. If they failed, it wouldn't just reflect poorly on him or his crew. It would confirm the doubts of those who believed humans weren't cut out for deep space travel. Beside him, Laura Bennett sat hunched over her console, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she analyzed data streaming in from the ship's sensors. Her focus was absolute, her mind consumed by the task of deciphering the strange energy signatures emanating from the expanse. "There's something unusual here," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "These readings don't match anything we've encountered before." Jake Thompson leaned over her shoulder, peering at the screen with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Unusual how?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck. "Is it dangerous?" Laura hesitated, her brow furrowing as she processed the information. "I'm not sure yet." Could be some kind of cosmic phenomenon, like a magnetic field or radiation burst. Or, she trailed off, glancing up at Ryan. Or it could be something artificial. Something built by someone, or something else. The thought hung heavy in the air. Artificial structures in deep space meant one thing: intelligent life. But encountering aliens out here wasn't part of the plan. Humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial beings had always been imagined as a carefully orchestrated event, not a random encounter in the middle of nowhere. Still, the possibility excited Laura as much as it unnerved her. Whatever lay ahead, it was unlike anything they'd prepared for. As the hours passed, the ship's sensors began picking up more anomalies. Strange pulses of energy rippled through the expanse, causing minor disruptions in the Odyssey's systems. Lights flickered intermittently, and Jake found himself scrambling to recalibrate equipment that hadn't needed adjustment since launch. "This place is messing with us," he muttered under his breath, tightening a bolt on one of the panels. "It feels like someone's trying to tell us we're not welcome." Ryan clenched his jaw but said nothing. He knew Jake was right. The azure expanse seemed almost alive, testing their resolve with every passing moment. Yet turning back wasn't an option. Not now. Not when they'd come so far. It wasn't long before their first real challenge appeared. Vast field of crystalline debris floating ominously in their path. The shards sparkled like diamonds under the dim light of a nearby star, but appearances were deceiving. Each fragment emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses that interfered with the ship's navigation systems. Flying straight through would risk catastrophic damage, potentially leaving them stranded in the expanse. "We need to find a way around," Ryan said firmly, studying the readings on his monitor. "Laura, can you map out a safe route?" She nodded, already working on the problem. "Give me a minute," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Within moments, she had plotted a trajectory that skirted the edge of the debris field. "Here," she said, pointing to the screen. "If we adjust our course slightly, we should be able to avoid the worst of it." "Should?" Jake echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You mean there's still a chance we hit something?" "There's always a chance," Laura admitted. But this is the best option we have." Ryan didn't waste time debating. "All right, let's do it. Jake, keep an eye on the engines. If anything starts acting up, I want to know immediately." With careful precision, Ryan guided the Odyssey along the designated path. The ship shuddered occasionally as stray pulses struck its hull, but they managed to stay on course. For a while, it seemed like they might make it through unscathed. Then, without warning, a massive shard loomed directly in their path, too large to maneuver around. "Brace yourselves," Ryan shouted, gripping the controls tightly. He activated the ship's thrusters, attempting to slow their descent, but the debris was moving faster than expected. At the last second, Jake slammed his hand down on the emergency override button. Rerouting power to the lateral stabilizers, a sudden surge of energy caused the ship to lurch violently, narrowly avoiding a collision. When the dust settled, literally, as tiny fragments of crystal clattered against the hull, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "That was too close," Jake muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Next time, let's try not to play chicken with giant space rocks, okay?" Despite the near disaster, Laura couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. "We made it," she said, allowing herself a small smile. "And we learned something important, that we can adapt. No matter what this place throws at us, we'll find a way to handle it." Ryan nodded, though his expression remained serious. "Adaptation is key, but we can't afford mistakes like that again. One wrong move out here and it's over." The Odyssey continued its journey. The crew took stock of their situation. Supplies were holding steady, and the ship's systems, while strained, were still functioning. Morale, however, was another story. The constant barrage of challenges was beginning to wear on them. The isolation of deep space weighed heavily on their minds. To combat the growing tension, Ryan called for a brief meeting in the ship's lounge, a cramped but cozy area designed for downtime. "Let's talk," he said, gesturing for everyone to sit. "Not about the mission, but about us. How are you all holding up?" Jake shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Honestly, I miss pizza. You're in showers that don't feel like standing." Under a leaky faucet, he chuckled, trying to lighten the mood, but his attempt fell flat. Laura crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the floor. It's hard, she admitted quietly. Being out here makes you realize how small we really are. Sometimes I wonder if we're chasing something impossible. Ryan leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. I won't lie to you. Facing things none of us could have predicted. But remember why we're here. We're not just flying blind into the unknown. We're proving that humanity has what it takes to survive out here. To thrive, every obstacle we overcome brings us closer to that goal. His words resonated with the group, reigniting a spark of determination. Laura looked up, her eyes shining with renewed purpose. You're right, she said. We can't give up now. Not when we've come so far. Jake grinned, his usual confidence returning. Besides, if we quit, who's going to tell the Valeth they were wrong about us? Can't let those smug aliens win. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, easing the tension that had built up over the past few days. By the time they returned to their stations, the atmosphere aboard the Odyssey felt noticeably lighter. The crew knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together, they could face whatever the azure expanse had in store. Hours turned into days as the ship pushed deeper into the expanse. The environment grew increasingly hostile, with gravitational distortions pulling at the hull in bursts of radiation, forcing the crew to take shelter behind reinforced bulkheads. Yet, through it all, they persevered. Laura fine-tuned their navigation algorithms, ensuring they stayed on course despite the chaos. Jake patched up mechanical failures with resourcefulness that bordered on genius. And Ryan led with unwavering resolve, reminding his team of their shared mission whenever doubt crept in. One evening, as the crew gathered in the lounge for another impromptu meeting, Laura pointed out a cluster of stars visible through the viewport. Do you see that? She asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Those aren't natural formations. Someone or something arranged them. Ryan squinted, following her gaze. Sure enough, the stars formed a pattern too precise to be coincidental. What does it mean? He asked. I don't know yet, Laura replied. But it's a sign, a message, maybe. Whatever it is, we're getting closer to finding answers. For the first time since leaving Earth, hope replaced fear. The azure expanse was still a mystery, but the crew of the Odyssey was determined to unravel it. Piece by piece, they were proving that humanity belonged among the stars, not as fragile beings clinging to survival. As pioneers carving their destiny in the infinite expanse of the cosmos, their journey was far from over. But one thing was certain. The Odyssey carried more than just 3 brave souls. It carried the dreams of an entire species, ready to defy the odds and claim its place in the universe. The Odyssey drifted closer to the mysterious cluster of stars that Laura had pointed out earlier. The pattern, though faint, seemed deliberate, like a beacon calling them forward. Ryan adjusted the ship's course, his hands steady on the controls, as he guided it toward the anomaly. The crew's excitement was palpable, but so was their caution. They had learned the hard way that nothing in the azure expanse could be trusted. As they approached, the sensors began picking up strange readings energy. Signatures unlike anything they'd encountered before. Laura furiously typed commands into her console, trying to make sense of the data. It's not natural, she said after a moment, her voice tinged with awe. This is artificial. On the where someone is creating this. Jake leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the screen. Artificial. You mean aliens? Exactly, Laura replied. And whatever it is, it's massive. Look at these energy levels, they're off the charts. Ryan frowned, his gaze fixed on the viewport ahead. If there are aliens here, we need to be careful. We don't know if they're friendly or hostile. The ship continued its slow approach until the source of the energy became visible, a colossal sphere floating silently in the void. Its surface shimmered with glowing patterns that shifted and pulsed like living light. It was far larger than the Odyssey, dwarfing even the biggest space stations back on Earth. The sight left the crew speechless. What is that thing? Jake whispered, his usual confidence replaced by a mix of wonder and unease. I don't. No, Laura admitted, but it's beautiful. Ryan cleared his throat, snapping them out of their reverie. Beautiful or not, we need to figure out what it isn't fast. If those aliens see us as a threat, we could be in serious trouble. Activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting a standard hailing message in multiple frequencies. This is Captain Ryan Carter of the Earth vessel Odyssey. Come in peace and seek understanding. For several tense minutes, there was no response. Just as Ryan began to wonder if the message had been ignored, the sphere emitted a low hum that vibrated through the Odyssey's hull. A bright beam of light shot out from the structure, enveloping the ship in an otherworldly glow. Alarms blared inside the cockpit, and Jake scrambled to stabilize the systems. They're scanning. Us, Laura exclaimed, her eyes glued to the monitors. They're analyzing every inch of the ship. The beam faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the crew blinking in confusion. Then, a voice echoed through the cabin, not in words, but in thoughts that resonated directly in their minds. It was calm but firm, carrying an authority that demanded attention. You are intruders, the voice said. Leave now, or face the consequences. Ryan exchanged a glance with Laura and Jake, his jaw tightening. He knew they couldn't afford to back down now, not when they were so close to making contact. Taking a deep breath, he addressed the voice aloud. We mean no harm. We are explorers from Earth, seeking knowledge and understanding. Please, allow us to explain ourselves. There was a long pause, during which the sphere seemed to pulse brighter, almost as if considering his request. Finally, the voice spoke again. You may enter, but beware your survival is not guaranteed. Before anyone could respond, a section of the sphere opened up, revealing a docking bay bathed in soft, golden light. Ryan hesitated for only a moment before guiding the Odyssey inside. As the ship settled into place, the crew prepared themselves for what might come next once docked. The trio donned their environmental suits and stepped cautiously onto the alien station. The air inside was breathable, though it carried a faint metallic temps. The walls around them glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the floor. Every step echoed unnaturally, as if the station itself was alive and listening. They were greeted by a group of beings unlike anything they'd imagined. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver, the aliens moved with an elegance that bordered on hypnotic. Their large, pupilless eyes studied the humans with cold detachment. One of them stepped forward, its elongated fingers, gesturing for them to follow. Laura glanced nervously at Ryan, who gave a slight nod. They had no choice but to comply. The alien led them to a vast chamber filled with intricate machinery and holographic displays. In the center stood another figure, who radiated authority. This must be their leader, Ryan thought. The being regarded them silently for a moment before speaking, its voice resonating in their minds once more. I am Zanara, it said, leader of the Kalen. Why have you come here? Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. We are representatives of humanity from a planet called Earth. Our goal is to explore the stars and prove that we belong among them. We seek knowledge and understanding, not conflict. Zanara tilted its head slightly, as if considering his words. Curekind is fragile, it said finally, short-lived, and ill-suited for the rigors of deep space. Many doubted you would survive even this far. We've faced challenges before, Ryan replied, and we've overcome them. That's what defines us, not our weaknesses, but our determination to keep moving forward. The Kalen leader studied him for a moment, longer, then turned to address the others. Very well, you may remain for now. But to leave this station alive, you must pass 3 trials. These tests will determine whether your species possesses the qualities necessary to endure the cosmos. Laura's heart raced. Trials. What did that mean? She wanted to ask, but something about Zanara's presence made her hesitate. Instead, she nodded along with Ryan, trusting him to lead. The first trial begins immediately, Zanara announced. With a wave of its hand, the chamber transformed. The walls shifted, forming a labyrinthine maze filled with shifting gravity fields and glowing symbols etched into the floor. You must navigate this puzzle, Zanara explained. Solve it, and you will move on. Fail, and you'll remain here forever. Without waiting for further instructions, the crew stepped into the maze. Ryan took point, his instincts kicking in as he scanned the surroundings. Laura followed closely, her sharp mind already working on deciphering the symbols. Jake brought up the rear, keeping an eye out for traps or hazards. The gravity fields proved disorienting, pulling them in different directions with each step. At one point, Jake stumbled and nearly floated upward, only to catch himself on a protruding ledge. "This is insane," he muttered, gripping the edge tightly. "Focus." Ryan snapped, his tone sharp but not unkind. "We can do this." Knelt beside one of the symbols, tracing its shape with her finger. "These look like mathematical equations," she said, her voice rising with excitement. "If I can solve them, we might be able to predict where the gravity shifts will occur." Working together, the team pieced together the puzzle. Laura solved the equations, guiding Ryan and Jake through the maze while avoiding the most dangerous areas. It wasn't easy. There were moments when they thought they'd hit a dead end. But their determination never wavered. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the exit. The walls dissolved around them, returning them to the main chamber. Zanara awaited them, its expression unreadable. "Impressive," it said simply. "Few succeed in the first trial. Now prepare for the second." The next challenge took place in a pitch-black corridor, illuminated only by faint pulsating lights embedded in the ceiling. As soon as they entered, the lights began flickering erratically, plunging the area into darkness. Jake froze, his fear of enclosed spaces threatening to overwhelm him. "Stay close," Ryan ordered, activating the flashlight on his suit. "We'll get through this." The corridor was lined with mechanical trap-spinning blades, collapsing floors, and sudden bursts of steam. Each step required precision and quick thinking. Laura used her knowledge of physics to anticipate the trap's movements, shouting warnings to the others. Jake, despite his nerves, relied on instinct and agility to dodge the dangers. Ryan kept them moving forward, his leadership keeping panic at bay. By the time they emerged from the corridor, all three were covered in sweat and grime, but alive. Zanara watched them silently, its glowing eyes betraying a hint of respect. "You have courage," it said. "Now for the final trial." The third test was unlike the others. They were placed in a simulation chamber where they found themselves, surrounded by holographic enemies, Callan warriors armed with advanced weaponry. The goal was simple: survive. At first, the crew struggled to coordinate their efforts. Ryan barked orders, directing Jake to focus on disabling the enemy weapons, while Laura provided cover using makeshift barriers. Slowly, they began to work as a unit, anticipating each other's moves and covering for one another's weaknesses. When the simulation ended, the holograms vanished, leaving the crew standing victorious but exhausted. Zanara approached them, its demeanor softer than before. "You have passed all three trials," it said. "Intelligence, courage, and unity. You possess qualities that even some of my own people lack." Ryan exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. "Does this mean we can leave?" Zanara hesitated. "Leaving this station is not easy. The gateway that leads outward is unstable and requires precise alignment. Even then, survival is not guaranteed. But you'll help us, right?" Jake asked, his voice hopeful. The Callan leader nodded. "I will grant you access to the gateway. Whether you survive is up to you." The Odyssey shot through the gateway like a bullet fired into the unknown. The swirling vortex of energy around them was chaotic, pulling and pushing at the ship in unpredictable ways. Alarms blared inside the cockpit as systems struggled to keep up with the strain. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white, while Laura and Jake worked frantically to stabilize the vessel. "It's tearing us apart," Jake shouted over the noise, his hands flying across the engineering console. "The whole integrity is dropping fast." "Hold on," Ryan barked, adjusting the thrusters to counteract the violent forces threatening to rip the ship apart. "Lara, how much longer until we're clear?" Laura stared at her monitor, her face pale but focused. I don't know. The gateway isn't stable. It could spit us out anywhere. Or nowhere. The ship shuddered violently, throwing them all off balance. Sparks flew from a panel near Jake's station, forcing him to dive out of the way just in time. We're losing power to the rear stabilizers, he yelled, scrambling back to his feet. If we don't fix this now, we're dead. Ryan clenched his jaw, his mind racing. They were running out of options. Jake reroute auxiliary power to the stabilizers. Laura, find me an exit point, Tenny exit point. I'm trying, Laura snapped, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She scanned the data pouring in from the sensors, searching for any sign of stability in the maelstrom. Suddenly, her eyes widened. There, I see a weak spot in the energy field ahead. If we can punch through it, we might make it out. Ryan ordered without hesitation. He pushed the engines to their limit, guiding the Odyssey toward the faint opening in the chaos. The ship groaned under the pressure, metal screeching as if it might buckle at any moment. Jake cursed under his breath as he fought to redistribute. Power! Come on, baby. Don't fail me now. With one final surge of effort, the Odyssey burst through the weak spot in the vortex. For a moment, everything went silent. The alarms stopped, the shaking ceased, and the crew sat frozen, unsure. If they were alive or dead then? Slowly, the viewport revealed their surroundings. They'd emerged into a vast expanse of space unlike anything they'd seen before. Stars burned brighter here, their light casting a soft glow over the ship. In the distance, a massive nebula swirled in hues of purple and gold, its beauty almost hypnotic. We made it, Laura whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. We actually made it. Ryan let out a shaky laugh, slumping back in his chair. Yeah, we did. But don't get too comfortable. Still don't know where we are. What's waiting for us out there? Jake wiped sweat from his forehead, grinning despite the exhaustion etched on his face. Well, wherever we are, it beats being torn apart by that crazy gateway. Let's call this a win for humanity, huh? As the initial shock wore off, the crew turned their attention to assessing their situation. The Odyssey had survived the journey, but it was far from unscathed. Panels sparked intermittently throughout the ship, and several systems remained offline. Jake immediately set to work repairing the damage, muttering to himself as he crawled through tight spaces to reach malfunctioning components. Meanwhile, Laura studied their new location, her curiosity piqued by the strange readings coming from the nebula. This place. It's incredible, she said, her voice filled with awe. The energy levels here are off the charts. It's like the entire area is alive with some kind of cosmic force. Ryan joined her at the console, studying the data. Do you think it's safe, or should we steer clear? I'm not sure. Yet, Laura admitted, but we can't ignore it. This could be exactly what we've been looking for, a clue about the mysteries of deep space. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. All right, but we proceed carefully. We've already pushed our luck enough for one day. Over the next few hours, the crew worked together to bring the Odyssey back to full functionality. Systems, improvising solutions were necessary. While Laura fine-tuned the navigation algorithms to account for the unusual gravitational pull emanating from the nebula, Ryan oversaw everything, ensuring they stayed on course and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Despite their progress, the isolation of deep space weighed heavily on them. They hadn't heard from Earth since entering the azure expanse, and the silence was deafening. Each passing day reminded them of how far they were from home and how unlikely it was that they'd ever return to lift their spirits. Ryan called. Another meeting in the lounge. Let's talk, he said, gesturing for everyone to sit. Not about repairs or navigation, but about each other. How are you holding up? Jake shrugged, leaning back in his chair. Honestly, I miss pizza. And showers that don't feel like standing under a leaky faucet. He chuckled, trying to lighten the mood, but his attempt fell flat. Laura crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the floor. It's hard, she admitted quietly, being out here. It makes you realize how small we really are. Sometimes I wonder, if we're chasing something impossible. Ryan leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "I won't lie to you, we're facing things none of us could have predicted, but remember why we're here. We're not just flying blind into the unknown. We're proving that humanity has what it takes to survive out here, to thrive. Every obstacle we overcome brings us closer to that goal." His words resonated with the group, reigniting a spark of determination. Laura looked up, her eyes shining with renewed purpose. "You're right," she said. "We can't give up now, not when we've come so far." Jake grinned, his usual confidence returning. "Besides, if we quit, who's going to tell the Valeth they were wrong about us? We can't let those smug aliens win." The conversation shifted to lighter topics, easing the tension that had built up over the past few days. By the time they returned to their stations, the atmosphere aboard the Odyssey felt noticeably lighter. The crew knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together they could face whatever the azure expanse had in store. Hours turned into days, as the ship drew closer to the nebula. The closer they got, the more bizarre the phenomena became. Time seemed to stretch and contract unpredictably, and strange visions flickered in the corners of their eyes. Laura theorized that the nebula might contain remnants of ancient civilizations whose technology had merged with the fabric of space itself. "This could be a treasure trove of knowledge," she said excitedly. "Imagine what we could learn about the universe and ourselves, if we can decipher these signals." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Or it could be a death trap. Either way, we need to be careful." When they finally entered the nebula, the ship was bathed in shimmering light. The crew marveled at the surreal landscape outside. The viewport clouds of glowing gas swirled lazily, forming intricate patterns that seemed almost deliberate. "This is unreal," Jake murmured, staring in awe. "It's like we've stepped into a dream." Suddenly, the sensors picked up something unexpected. A faint transmission coming from within the nebula. Laura's eyes lit up as she isolated the signal. "It's artificial," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "Someone or something is trying to communicate." Ryan frowned, his instincts kicking in. "Could it be the Kalen? Or another alien species?" "I don't think so," Laura replied. "The frequency is different. This is older, like it's been here for thousands of years." The transmission grew stronger as they followed it deeper into the nebula. Eventually, they came upon the source, a derelict spacecraft, drifting silently among the clouds of gas. Its design was unlike anything they'd ever seen, sleek yet ancient, covered in symbols that glowed faintly. "What do you think?" Ryan asked, turning to the others. Laura hesitated, then nodded. "We have to investigate. This could be the key to understanding the azure expanse and, maybe, even proving once and for all that humanity belongs among the stars." Jake sighed, grabbing a toolkit. "All right, let's go play archaeologist. Just promise me no ghost ships. Or killer robots, okay?" Ryan smirked. "No promises." Together, the crew suited up and prepared to board the mysterious vessel. As they floated across the void toward it, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far greater than themselves. Whatever secrets the ship held, they were determined to uncover them for humanity, for Earth, and for the future of exploration. Their journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Odyssey carried more than just 3 brave souls. It carried the dreams of an entire species, ready to defy the odds and claim its place in the universe. The crew of the Odyssey approached the derelict spacecraft with a mix of excitement and unease. The ship loomed before them, its surface weathered by time but still glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Laura adjusted her helmet's visor, her breath fogging up the glass as she studied the symbols etched into the hull. "This is incredible," she murmured over the comms. "These markings, but they're not just decorative. They're part of some kind of language." Ryan floated nearby, his hand resting on the hilt of a plasma cutter strapped to his belt. "Let's stay sharp," he said, his voice firm. "We don't know what's waiting for us inside." Jake, ever the pragmatist, gave the ship a skeptical once-over. "Looks like it's been sitting here for centuries. Hope nothing crawls out of it." They docked their suits to the alien craft using magnetic clamps and entered through a jagged, opening in the hole likely caused by some long-forgotten collision. Inside, the air was stale, tinged with the metallic scent of decay. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsing with a dim light that seemed alive, responding to their presence. "This place feels wrong," Jake muttered, gripping his flashlight tightly. "Like it knows we're here." Lara ignored him, her focus entirely on the strange carvings lining the corridors. She snapped photos with her wrist-mounted camera, already mentally cataloging patterns and shapes. "This could be a breakthrough," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "If we can decode this, we might learn something about whoever built this ship and why they abandoned it." Ryan nodded, keeping his eyes peeled for any signs of danger. "Stick close. We don't know what kind of traps or defenses they left behind." The deeper they ventured, the stranger the environment became. The walls shifted slightly under their touch, rippling like liquid metal. Panels displayed holographic images of star charts and unfamiliar creatures, flickering erratically as if struggling to function after millennia of disuse. At one point, Jake accidentally triggered a mechanism, causing a section of the floor to retract and reveal a hidden compartment filled with crystalline devices. "What are those?" Ryan asked, crouching down to examine them. "No idea," Laura replied, carefully picking one up. It hummed softly in her hand, emitting a warm glow. "But I think they're meant to store information. Maybe we can interface them with our systems." Back on the Odyssey, Jake raised an eyebrow. "You sure that's a good idea? What if it blows up in our faces?" "We'll take precautions," Ryan interjected, cutting off the debate. "For now, bag it and keep moving. We need to find the main control room or whatever passes for one." After navigating a series of twisting hallways, they finally reached what appeared to be the heart of the ship, a massive chamber dominated by a central console, surrounded by floating orbs of light. The orbs pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie shadows across the room. In the center of the console was a large crystal embedded in the surface, glowing brighter as the crew approached. "This must be where the transmissions are coming from," Laura said, pointing to the crystal. "It's acting like a beacon." Ryan stepped forward cautiously, his hand hovering near his plasma cutter. "Can you shut it off? We don't want to attract unwanted attention." Before Laura could respond, the crystal flared brightly, bathing the entire chamber in blinding light. When the glare faded, the crew found themselves face to face with a holographic figure, being unlike anything they'd encountered before. Its form was humanoid, but translucent, its features shifting constantly as though it existed in multiple states at once. Who are you?" Ryan stammered, taking a step back. The figure didn't speak in words. Instead, its voice echoed directly in their minds. "I am a guardian of knowledge," it said. "A keeper of truths lost to time. You have entered my domain uninvited." Laura swallowed hard, clutching the crystalline device tightly. "We mean no harm. We only seek understanding." The hologram tilted its head, studying them intently. "Your kind has traveled far to reach this place. The curiosity to venture so deeply into the unknown. Why do you seek this knowledge?" Ryan straightened, meeting the being's gaze. "We come from Earth, a planet on the edge of the galaxy. For centuries, others have doubted our ability to survive in deep space. But we've proven time and again that we're capable of overcoming impossible challenges. We want to show the universe that humanity belongs among the stars." The hologram paused, seemingly considering his words. Then, it extended a shimmering hand toward Laura, who instinctively held out the crystalline device. The object levitated from her grasp and floated toward the console, slotting itself into the crystal embedded there. "You carry within you the potential for greatness," the hologram said, "but also the seeds of destruction. Choose wisely how you wield the knowledge you seek." With that, the chamber began to transform. The walls lit up with streams of data, projecting images of ancient civilizations, advanced technologies, and cosmic events spanning billions of years. Laura gasped, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information flooding her senses. "This is everything," she whispered. "Histories, sciences, philosophies, all preserved here." Ryan turned to Jake, who looked equally stunned. "We download this? Take it back to Earth?" I think so, Jake replied, pulling out a portable data drive. He connected it to the console, watching as files streamed into the device. But this is going to take hours, maybe days. As the download progressed, the hologram addressed them once more. Let's be warned. Not all truths are meant to be shared. Some knowledge carries consequences beyond your comprehension. Laura frowned, turning to face the entity. What do you mean? You saying we shouldn't share this with humanity? I say nothing, the hologram replied cryptically. Only that understanding comes with responsibility. Use what you have learned wisely. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the crew alone in the silent chamber. The weight of what they had discovered settled heavily on their shoulders. They had uncovered a treasure trove of knowledge, but also a burden they hadn't anticipated. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew worked tirelessly to process the downloaded data. Laura pored over the files, her mind racing with possibilities. This changes everything, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Medicine, energy production, space travel, it's all here. Humanity could leap centuries ahead if we apply this properly. Jake, however, remained cautious. Or we could screw it up royally. Remember what that hologram said? Not all truths are meant to be shared. What if this stuff starts wars? Or worse. Ryan sat quietly, weighing their arguments. We can't make that decision alone, he said finally. When we get back to Earth, assuming we make it, we'll present this to the right people. Scientists, leaders, ethicists. Let them decide how to handle it. But will they listen? Laura asked, her tone tinged with frustration. Governments have agendas. Corporations want profits. What happens when greed gets involved? That's not our problem right now, Ryan replied firmly. Our job is to survive long enough to deliver this knowledge. After that, it's out of our hands. As the days passed, the crew prepared for the final leg of their journey. The nebula had begun to destabilize, its swirling gases growing increasingly violent. Laura calculated a narrow window of opportunity to escape before. The region collapsed entirely. We need to leave soon, she said, her expression grim. Otherwise, we risk getting caught in the implosion. Ryan nodded, his resolve unwavering. Then let's finish packing up and get moving. We've done what we came here to do. Now it's time to go home. Jake grinned, patting the side of the ship affectionately. Home, huh? Feels weird calling Earth that after all this. Despite their exhaustion, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced unimaginable dangers and uncovered secrets that could reshape the future of humanity. But the hardest part, the journey back, still lay ahead, as the Odyssey fired up its engines and prepared to leave the nebula behind. Ryan stood at the helm, gazing out at the swirling chaos outside. No matter what happens next, he said softly, we've proven something important. Humanity isn't defined by its limitations. We're defined by our ability to dream, to explore, and to push beyond what others think is possible. Laura smiled, her eyes shining with pride. And we've shown the universe that we belong. Jake chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Yeah. Just don't forget to tell NASA we saved the human race while we were out here, okay? The engines roared to life, propelling the Odyssey forward into the vast expanse of space. Ahead of them lay countless unknowns, but for the first time in months, hope outweighed fear. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together as pioneers, as survivors, and as representatives of a species determined to carve its destiny. Among the stars, the Odyssey hurtled through the void, its battered hull bearing the scars of countless trials. The nebula had faded into the distance, leaving behind only a faint glow on the edge of the viewport. Inside the ship, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for their return to Earth, or at least what they hoped would be Earth. Laura sat hunched over her console, double-checking the coordinates she had programmed into the navigation system. Jake tinkered with the engine bay, ensuring every bolt and wire was in place. Ryan stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of stars ahead. We're almost there, Laura said finally, breaking the silence that had settled over the cabin. Her voice carried a mix of relief and apprehension. Are correct? We should reach Earth's orbit in less than 2 days. Jake wiped grease from his hands and leaned against the doorway, his usual grin replaced by a thoughtful expression. You think anyone will believe us? About everything we've seen, I mean? Ryan glanced back at him, his face unreadable. They'll have to. We've got proof data recordings, even those crystals. They'll see what we've done, what we've risked. But will it matter? Laura asked quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of her tablet. We've proven humanity can survive deep space. We've uncovered knowledge that could change the world, but what if no one listens? What if they don't care? They'll care, Ryan replied firmly, though there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about showing the universe and ourselves that we belong out here. As the hours passed, the crew began to feel the weight of their journey pressing down on them. Exhaustion gnawed at their bodies and minds, but none of them dared slow down. Every system aboard the Odyssey needed constant monitoring. Any failure now could mean disaster. Jake muttered under his breath as he patched up a coolant line, his frustration mounting with each new problem. Laura stared blankly at her monitor, trying to ignore the growing headache pounding behind her temples. Even Ryan, who had always been the rock of the group, found himself questioning whether they'd truly made the right choices. We've come so far, Laura said suddenly, startling the others. Risked everything, and for what? To prove something to aliens who probably won't even notice? To prove it to ourselves, Ryan answered without hesitation. Faced wasn't just about survival, it was about proving that we're capable of more than anyone thought possible, including us. Laura nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. You're right. Whatever happens next, we've already changed things. For better or worse, we've shown humanity what's possible. Jake snorted, cracking a small smile. And hopefully NASA gives us hazard pay for this trip. I'm thinking pizza. Lots and lots of pizza. Despite the tension, laughter filled the cabin, a rare moment of levity in an otherwise grueling mission. For a brief second, it felt like they were back on Earth, sitting around a table sharing stories instead of hurtling through the cosmos. When the Odyssey finally entered Earth's orbit, the crew braced themselves for what awaited them below. Communication with ground control crackled to life after months of silence, static giving way to voices filled with disbelief and excitement. Odyssey, this is Mission Control. Is that really you? Came the shaky voice of Commander Harris, the man who had overseen their launch all those months ago. It's us, Ryan confirmed, a hint of pride in his tone. We made it. There was a long pause before Harris responded, his voice thick with emotion. You did the impossible. Welcome home. The descent through Earth's atmosphere was tense but uneventful. As the ship broke through the clouds, the familiar curve of the planet came into view: blue oceans, green continents, and sprawling cities glowing under the sun. For the first time in what felt like forever, the crew allowed themselves to breathe easy. When the Odyssey touched down at the landing site, crowds had gathered, cheering wildly as the hatch opened. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and government officials rushed forward to greet the returning heroes. Ryan, Laura, and Jake stepped onto the platform. Blinking in the bright sunlight and squinting against the sea of faces staring up at them. You did it, one official said, shaking Ryan's hand vigorously. You proved the skeptics wrong. Humanity owes you everything. Ryan forced a polite smile, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He knew the real work was just beginning. The data they brought back, the knowledge stored in those ancient crystals would spark debates, inspire breakthroughs, and perhaps ignite conflicts. But for now, he let himself enjoy the moment. They had succeeded where many believed failure was inevitable. In the weeks that followed, the crew became global icons. Their story dominated headlines, inspiring millions around the world. Scientists pored over the data they had collected, marveling at the possibilities it presented. Engineers studied the alien technology, eager to adapt it for human use. Philosophers debated the ethical implications of wielding such advanced knowledge, but not everyone celebrated. Critics argued that humanity wasn't ready for the responsibilities that came with such power. Governments clashed over how to distribute the newfound resources, while corporations lobbied for exclusive rights to exploit the discoveries. Amidst the chaos, Ryan, Laura, and Jake found themselves thrust into a different kind of battle, one fought not in the depths of space but in boardrooms and political arenas. One evening, the trio met privately in a quiet corner of NASA headquarters. The room was dimly lit, the air heavy with exhaustion. Laura leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "I didn't sign up for this," she admitted bitterly. "I wanted to explore, to learn, not play politics." Jake shrugged, swirling the dregs of his coffee cup. "Welcome to being famous. Everyone wants a piece of us now," Orion sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We knew this would happen. People fear what they don't understand. It's our job to guide them, to make sure this knowledge is used wisely, and if it's not," Laura asked softly. "Then we fight," Ryan replied simply. "Just like we always have." Months turned into years, and the impact of their mission continued to ripple across the globe. Advances in medicine eradicated diseases once thought incurable. New energy sources reduced humanity's reliance on fossil fuels, curbing environmental damage. Space exploration entered a golden age, with missions launching to distant star systems inspired by the Odyssey's success. Yet, the crew remained humble, aware of the fragility of their achievements. They often reflected on the hologram's warning that not all truths were meant to be shared. While humanity celebrated its newfound capabilities, Ryan, Laura, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had opened Pandora's box. Still, they refused to dwell on regret. Instead, they focused on the future, mentoring younger generations of explorers and advocating for responsible use of the alien knowledge. Together, they founded the Deep Space Initiative, an organization dedicated to ensuring humanity's expansion into the cosmos. It was guided by wisdom rather than greed. On the anniversary of their return, the three stood side by side on a balcony, overlooking Cape Canaveral, watching as a new fleet of ships prepared for launch. The sight filled them with pride, knowing they had paved the way for others to follow. "We proved them wrong," Laura said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "The Valeth, the doubters, everyone who said we couldn't do it. We showed humanity what it means to dream," Ryan added, gazing at the stars above. "To push beyond fear and embrace the unknown." Jake grinned, raising an imaginary toast. "Here's to pizza, showers, and surviving the impossible." They laughed, the sound carrying on the breeze as the rockets roared to life below. Humanity's journey into the stars had only just begun, and thanks to the bravery of three ordinary individuals, it would continue for generations to come, for Ryan, Laura, and Jake. The legacy of the Odyssey wasn't just about surviving deep space. It was about proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology or ambition, but in its ability to adapt, endure, and hope. And as long as those qualities endured, the universe would never be too vast for humankind to explore.